Blazor. Companies are slowly but surely adopting it. This adoption comes with a lot of questions, uncertainty, experimentation, and requests to either build proof of concept or how to migrate their current model view controller project into a Blazor one. I'm not going to focus too much on the pros and cons of single-page applications or whether to go completely client-side or server-side. I'll leave that for other videos. What I want to focus on today is about migrating from an MVC project to a Blazor project. Some of the questions I get is it possible to gradually add Blazor into your current model view controller project? How do you do that? What are the limitations? Or should I build an entirely new Blazor application on the side? And once that's sufficiently functional, put that one online and take the current model view controller project offline. If you know a third approach or a better approach, do let me know in the comment section below. If you are there, don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe button. Let's try to gradually evolve an MVC project to a Blazor one. For that, I would recommend to upgrade at least to dotnet 8. The ASP.NET Core team has done a really good job of making these templates, whether it's an MVC or a Blazor project, very similar. At least the program CS looks very similar. And to switch between project types, you may only need to modify a few lines. So once you successfully migrated your .NET MVC project to the latest .NET 8, adding Blazor should be a breeze. It will at least be way easier than trying the same thing in a .NET 7 or a .NET 6 project. That said, I'll be starting from a new .NET MVC project for demo purposes. I know, of course, that is way easier. So I scaffolded both project, model view controller, and then a Blazor web app with only the server side. So if we take a look at the program CS of both projects, we'll see similarities. So you can see that enabling Blazor inside of the MVC project would only require me to copy over a few lines. So why I start with the static Blazor setup comparison is because that's most similar to the MVC project, because both are static server-side projects without interactivity by default. So for an MVC project, you'll likely see jQuery handling the interactivity. And for Blazor, you'll either see the use of the WebSockets or the WebAssembly to create that highly interactive user experience. And of course, there's always projects that don't really need the interactivity but could benefit from it. I'm talking about simple small business websites or product pages. But in a lot of MVC projects, you'll see a bunch of jQuery, Vue.js, Knockout.js, or any other data binding or DOM manipulating JavaScript library, not only to create more engaging, dynamic, interactive user interfaces and experiences, but also to separate concerns. The UI concerns, UI handling logic from the server-side data handling logic. And that is another tip I really wanted to include in this video, is that separating those UI concerns from the data concerns is highly recommended, since you can then more easily replace the front end. Anyway, you no longer need Knockout.js, jQuery, or Vue.js in your model view controller project. You could instead use Blazor to add that highly interactive user experience. So I'm going to add a components folder to the MVC project and make a Blazor component in there. Let's see if that works. To test that, I'm going to have to render this component on a model view controller view. So let's see the home page. I'm going to try to add the Blazor component. We can't unfortunately do this. That syntax is not supported on a CS HTML. We could add the HTML tag helper for that, render component async, weather component, and the render mode of static. We can even pass that. And I had to use the components folder. Let's give that a go. And then we get our Blazor component rendered in an MVC project, which is cool because now we can use the Blazor or the Razor component model. But now, yeah, we're simply displaying that component, rendering that component. Maybe we want to do a bit more with it. Like something we could do is pass parameters. I saw summaries. And let's copy that over from here. Let's try that. And then of course the component needs to support these parameters, string, title, and then a parameter for the summaries, public string summaries set. And let's try to remove these summaries and replace them with the parameter. Okay, now it's complaining we're using that static one, so let's revert that to, let's see, let's try the lifecycle. Initialize should work on a static, if I'm not mistaken. The on after render async won't work since that requires interactivity. Let's just say forecasts equals that. And let's revert this to that random one. Let's give that a go. Okay, I made a small typo. And we're getting the weather data, and the summaries are passed down. I'm not using the title. Let's quickly add that in somewhere. Let's say add title and rerun it. Say weather forecasts. And it says weather forecast, and the summaries are there. So we can successfully use Blazor components in there. And we've established that this doesn't work in a CS HTML, but there's another way instead of using this HTML tag helper, and that is to use the component tag, something like this, component type, weather, render mode of static. And then these parameters are a little harder to pass. I think they need, or maybe just using the params. Yeah, I should double check what that was again, but I remember something prefixed like param and then just an example and then title, something like that. But I can't remember. So we didn't really add anything Blazor related. We're actually just rendering Razor components, which enables the use of the Razor syntax, the if-else statements, for each, and much more, which could make us more productive and could help in the gradual evolution to Blazor. But this is still static, not really Blazor related. If I were to switch the render mode to .server, you'd expect the WebSockets, the interactive server, but yeah, we didn't really add Blazor to this project yet. So that's just a Razor component, statically rendered, and if I added the render mode of server, it's not even rendering the component properly, so it's just gone. I'm going to run that and see if that actually does something. To run it, of course, I'll have to add that component. So let's try it in here. Request form, and let's try to. So I opened the console, but it's likely going to log a server side. I'm just going to add test. And it got refreshed even. And I don't see any log statement, so I'm assuming it's just not working because it's not. This is an MVC project, it's not really a Blazor project. Then we just see form, method post, and action to slash, which is actually going to post to our MVC controller and not be handled in the submit method like we specified in here. Because that requires, my assumption is that requires the Blazor router, or at least to have a full single page Blazor setup. Because in my understanding, the Blazor router or Blazor in itself intercepts these form posts and the page navigations and so on to make it act like a single page app that dynamically replaces content based on which link is clicked or what action the user took, instead of reloading the entire page and getting the static HTML. So if that's your goal, you just want an MVC project and be a bit more productive using Razor components just to display data, but it's limited to statically rendering stuff. It's not gonna have interactivity, so no button clicks, no on after render async methods, the form posts are likely going to go to your controllers instead of being handled dynamically or client side or whatever you want to achieve. So to achieve such a thing, we actually are going to have to go all the way single page app. Something else I tried is to simply add the Blazor script tag, but it's not really that simple. If you use it like that by just including Blazor on your CS HTML pages and you get the benefits of Blazor, do let me know in the comments. After trying for hours and hours, I don't think this is it's as simple as that. I do think we're going to have to go all the way single page app. So let's do that now. We're going to add an app.razor. And I'm going to add I think it's a routes.razor, which will hold the router. And I might need something else, the main layout. Oops. And let's just copy over the HTML and Blazor tags that live in the Blazor project. So if we take a look at, let's start with the app.razor. Just copy over all of that stuff. It doesn't know this head outlet, so we'll likely have to add an imports.razor as well. Let's see, underscore imports.razor. And we just remove everything and we'll copy the imports stuff. Copy over the routes and then the main layout. Don't really want the CSS. Nav menu, not. And the most important will likely be the Blazor components. Like that. Let's follow the same folder structure as the Blazor project does to compare better, which isn't necessary. Component. Okay. And let's add the weather forecast table. Let's say title Blazor placed, and could likely add the form as well if we wanted to. Let's just add them all, otherwise I might get an index error. I'm going to try to put this route on Blazor, because now we both have the MVC going on the index, so on the slash, the root route, and also the Blazor one, so we'll need to keep those separate. So now running that project should give me both an MVC project and a Blazor project, but running side by side, the MVC on the index route and the Blazor on the Blazor route. Let's have a look. I did need to add this middleware anti-forgery. So that gives me the MVC on the root route, and let's try the Blazor, which gives me the Blazor components. Let's do test. Now that seems to reload again. At least that did do the console print, so that onSubmit method is working from the component. Let's have a look. So this onSubmit logged the model ID, which is test. So that's working well. Blazor is working, the Blazor router is working, and so on. I quickly copied the files from the static files from the Blazor project into the www root from the MVC project, and that's exactly the case. Although this reload, I'd hope to not see that. But it's not like our MVC is now also running Blazor correctly or something. If we submit, still nothing really happens. It's still just posting to the MVC controllers. So in the ideal scenario, you could probably have an CS.html, put some Blazor components in there and add, which may have interactivity or something, and kind of gradually evolve to a fully Blazor application. Unfortunately, I don't see the single page app and the working well on the CS.html pages. I didn't get that to work. If you know how to do that, do let me know. How I see it now is you have the MVC and you can use Razor components just to statically render stuff. Or you could have a single page Blazor application. Could live inside the same project, but it's going to be running on a different route or something, at least not on the same pages. So that makes me wonder if it's really worth it to try to get Blazor components working in a MVC project, at least on the same pages as the MVC stuff. And I fear that the using Razor or Blazor on an MVC project is quite limited unless you go all the way single page app. So knowing that, I would probably recommend to just start a Blazor project, a new one on the side. So now we kind of have a Blazor single page app inside of the same project as the model view controller, which kind of resembles the .NET Core hosted Blazor setup. I'll probably dedicate a video to the .NET Core hosted Blazor single page app or WebAssembly Blazor. To add interactivity, of course, we just enable these. And then we'll have to set either on individual component level or on global level. Go to the app.razor and say it's written at render mode in one word. So I'm quickly adding the counter component, copied it over from the Blazor project. Let's rerun. Now we have the counter, click me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, successfully added Blazor to an MVC project. It's not really gradual because now they're living side by side, and we'll likely be building the Blazor application entirely to a point that it can replace the model view controller project, which is actually the second approach. And maybe better would be to just create a new project like we did in here. Then that could be a standalone server-side Blazor project, for example, that could access the same database, or go over HTTP to get the data from an API, or could be a standalone Blazor WebAssembly project, either hosted by the MVC project. So then you just reference that project and make sure in the program CS that this app comes from the Blazor WebAssembly project. But then let's say you do that HTTP communication to get the data in the Blazor app. Then you'll likely be evolving your MVC project more into an API. So either just adding controller endpoints, or gradually removing all the UI related logic and make it focus on just serving the data over the API endpoints. And I would definitely recommend to evolve it on like the second approach, like to have a separate Blazor project and maybe then handle the communication over HTTP, or have a standalone project just to at least separate out the front-end responsibility, let's say, with the API data or backend responsibilities. Because I often hear like, oh, our views and our API controllers are intertwined and we can't really easily replace the views by Blazor components, or we can't really extract out the business logic. And that's all complaints I'm hearing, and that's likely all steps you'll need to take to upgrade your project, evolve it to a Blazor project or to a Blazor and an API project. And it makes it also way easier. Let's say you have extracted out all of the business logic into an API project, let's say, then you only need to build the front-end Blazor. If you have any more questions about this, feel free to ask them in the comments. If you know more about this, have another approach, do let me know in the comments. As usual, I'll be posting my code to my Patreon/stupid, and there's currently a discount on the entire brand website with a lot of awesome features. So make sure to check all of that out, and I hope I see you in the next one.